Today, without further ado, I'll be talking to you about traffic management as a service, or how CITS, cooperative and connected intelligent transport systems, actually play a role in traffic management and bring it more towards a service orientation. So, what I've noticed is very frequently in the UK, there's a lot of congestion. I mean, I don't live in London, I'm close to London, and I've heard a lot of talk about the M25 being a big traffic jam every once in a while, which is not something we like to see. So every once in a while you get signs to look like this, long delays. What does that mean in particular? Sometimes it gets a little bit closer to this. Unintelligible information. It's basically information that is generic and doesn't give you a lot of additional information. It's usable for everybody, but doesn't do a very good job at actually showing everything else, or you just get a black screen in the end. In the end, though, I think what it ultimately gets to is a feeling like this. M25 congestion is not this bad. This is actually one of the world's record congestion traffic jams. So this is in China. The traffic jam was actually a couple of 100 kilometers and had been stationary for a number of days. So yeah, that's definitely something we don't want to see more of. So in some instances, you actually never get to work if you use the M25. So what does this actually mean for us? In terms of the economic impact of this, traffic congestion is massive. On an annual basis, it costs us a lot of money. On average for European countries, it's about 1% of GDP, give or take, which is a considerable figure, especially given the fact that there are a lot of trends that we're seeing right now which are playing in the traffic management space. So what is actually interesting about this is the trends that we're seeing. There's a lot of austerity, both for national as well as local authorities. We see an decreasing amount of knowledge with them, and a heavier reliance on external consultants to actually input this knowledge into the organization. Technology is moving at such a fast pace that a lot of this is flying over many people's heads. So if you speak to local authorities on a frequent basis, ultimately what they're very interested in is the latest and greatest in traffic tech. What's been happening in this space, and what are we doing to actually combat traffic congestion? In combination with this urban growth rate and decreasing pressure on environmental quality, as we see in air emissions debates frequently now in cities, and road networks under pressure, we see that the urge to actually improve traffic management and provide a more performance-driven output is increasing massively. This paired with, as I said before, the rapid technological development is incredibly good in pushing this towards the next level. So what's actually helping drive this solution? Well, ultimately, individual vehicle data, probe vehicle data, is something we all currently generate more and more of. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody knows about the Google Maps, the TomTom Maps, people like TomTom here, Inrix, anything that generates a lot of individual level data as opposed to the generic top-down data via loops and cameras that's being detected right now is filling in the gaps. Static loops, in between those loops there's no data collection. This static data is now being supplemented by very, very granular individual vehicle data, making the map look more like something on the right. It's a better representation of the actual movements along the traffic network, and as a result, ideally, we can respond to something like this. So users, ideally, because of these applications on their phones and this personalized need for information, is asking for something that benefits them. Getting from A to B is something that you're very keen to do effectively, and you don't really care about the other person stuck with you on the M25 in terms of if you are able to get from A to B quicker than that specific person. So for DINIC, this is important because it enables us to play a role in bringing together collective management with individual user needs. So enhancing traffic monitoring and moving to an advanced traffic network system and management of it is critical. So currently the picture looks a little bit like this. You have traffic signals, you have loops on the road, and you get a lot of vehicle data. But ideally, we get to a place where this is the picture. A lot of individual vehicles are generating a lot of generated data, cooperative awareness messages, standardized, Wi-Fi beacons, 4G beacons, Bluetooth. Those are all supplementing the role of providing and enhancing and generating a lot of individual vehicle data. We get driving speeds, we get the status of windscreen wipers, emergency braking, even autonomous vehicle control systems are starting to generate this data and are supplementing the existing kind of traditional pool of data with new forms of data generation, which ultimately will have to mean something to us in order to make use of it. So I mentioned advanced traffic management. Well, what is that really? What does this all mean, and what does all this data actually tell us? So the way to actually look at this, and this is an approach Cynic has been taking for a while now, is understanding, like I said before, balancing collective with individual user needs. So the top-down traffic management versus the bottom-up individual vehicle control of that is something that's critical in enhancing and advancing the network traffic management as a service. To do this, we work with clients. We're close to local authorities, we're close to national authorities, and we operationalize and look at what those policy objectives for people are. So taking those into account are critical in driving the appropriate need and appropriate management for their specific network. And in addition to this, control, obviously, because of the data generation and the technological advancement we see, there is a massive proliferation in additional control measures which we can now employ to actually do traffic management and enhance it in effect. And of course, the data, and Simon Otley, one of our consultants, will talk about this later today, is the data itself. What is it driving? What journey really is this data telling us? And what do we do with it? Both historically, we're generating and keeping lots of it, but in real time too. What does this allow us to do to adapt to what we're seeing? And that needs to result into something that works with us for that. So, touching on the collective versus the individual, what really plays a role here is balancing collective level data, so generic information, but also tying that in with strategic network control for the individual. So traditional top-down control, what does it utilize? What does it do? It's the VMS signs, kind of the gantry signs, the static traffic signal information, which is not tailored for your specific need. For your specific need, you go down to personalized information, Google Maps. What do you do? Where do you want to go from A to B? And what is your need to get from A to B as quickly as possible? Real-time data provision is something that's balancing this out now, and being much more proactive rather than reactive to traffic events is what this is allowing us to do. So it's much more user-oriented, much more so than we initially thought was possible. Traffic management was always aimed at the end user and also the network operator, but more and more so we're seeing that end user is becoming much more important to do actual traffic management. So policy objectives, as we've all heard, and I'm sure we're all aware, one of the options is to throw a lot of money at it. $1 trillion apparently is going to solve a lot of infrastructure problems in the US, but in reality I don't think in the UK that's something that's feasible. But some of the examples that I can give you here is people look at journey time improvements, enhancing accessibility, unlocking new growth areas. Housing in particular is a big UK issue, but as a result of that it obviously puts a lot of pressure on specific bits of the road network. Reducing emissions, clean air zones, and the clean air zone debate is currently ongoing and playing a massive role in terms of potential fines for local authorities. And improving the road user satisfaction. Again, this road user orientation comes back into play. It's incredibly important to actually adapt information to make it useful for the road user itself. So it's very much more performance driven and outcome oriented than it ever was. So in terms of control, what does this actually allow us to do? Well, traditionally there are a number of mechanisms we've always been able to use. These are a number of examples, but I want to draw your attention to the new type of control measures. So in particular, in-vehicle information services. We have a demonstration of this on stand. I'm inviting you to come over and check it out if that's interesting to you. But that's one of the key examples we are currently already using to provide relevant personalized information to end users to optimize the running of their journey and moving them from A to B, especially on key corridors, especially on key junctions, especially on key motorways. As I said before, and we'll hear more of that later today, predictive analytics. What does the data actually do? What does it mean? What is the historical relevance? What causalities can we find when compiling it together? And what does it do in particular for us to enhance the understanding of the road dynamics, the movements of traffic patterns, on top of what we already know and see from local knowledge? Of course, combining data sources is then important, and ultimately autonomous driving is going to come into play, but only until late 2025, 2030. So in the meantime, we still have a lot of facets that we need to address in order to actually move towards more advanced traffic management. So really, what we're trying to get to is an analysis and prediction of what we think will be the most applicable strategy to operationalize those local policy objectives and get to a more outcome-oriented and performance-driven information service for end users. Obviously, historical and real-time data are playing a key role in this, both for emissions monitoring, both for strategic network management and control, as well as the provision of these and generation of these new use cases for in-vehicle information services. And one of the big aims of this is really making data open. So we at DINIC work hard at making interfaces open and making systems modular to be able to take in and also interface to external systems for the benefit of road users. A big step here is predicting that road user behavior and predicting what analytics is going to be able to tell us. So preceding events, being more proactive or very, very quick to react to traffic events is something that analyzing the existing data and availability of it to us will be able to do. And the mechanisms which we have to actually do this. So things like clever algorithms, without using hype words, clever algorithms behind the traffic management system strategy generation and the response of systems taking in large amounts of data and providing information services back down to users are examples of what we're currently looking at improving and already doing on road networks. So the key is really collecting more data. Internet of Things is a big proliferation term right now. We're seeing a huge, huge availability of data. Interfaces are becoming more and more open. Data is becoming more and more cost efficient to obtain and also in many cases free. So the ultimate result of this is something that we call traffic management as a service. What we see really is, like I said before, the performance-driven and very service-oriented model. It's balancing the collective need with the individual need. It's operationalizing those local policy objectives or even national policy objectives into something that works for the client, something that they have a real wish for on their road network, but also gives them the strategic control and the assets to do that. The combination of traditional with new and open data sources is something that plays a massive role in this. And as always, it's much more user-focused, much more client-driven. The end user is playing a critical role in the identification of appropriate measures for improving network performance, making traffic management more advanced and making it more efficient. And that's even doable with existing data sources. It doesn't, it's not far off. ITS has been a thing and it's been around for a long while, but at the moment we are already seeing a large amount of available mechanisms and tools. If you look around traffic, there's loads of things that we can already do. And even on our stand, you find great examples of how we can actually provide you with some, more detailed and more insight-driven picture of what that means. So with that, I kindly invite you to come over to our stand, have a look at the booths, have a look at what we offer in terms of traffic management as a service, and feel free to ask any further questions. Thank you.